Alright, so basically we're going to go over some fundamentals of rendering. What you want to do is add some shapes to your drawing. So open up a simple blank page. Use any shape you like. So I'm using a rectangle, I'm going to use a cylinder, cone. You can keep going as you wish. So I got these shapes, they're lovely, they're in my 2D wireframe, which I'm going to change now to not our conceptual that we usually go to, but to realistic. So realistic gives you it's like a more realistic view where you add material, you'll actually see the material. So in rendering, when you start placing material, you actually see it in a preview area. That way you don't have to worry about actually doing the render to get the exact understanding of how your drawing looks like once it's rendered. So once you have that completed, just keep adding any shape you like, put it into realistic, go into your render tab, and we're going to be working in this area here. The first step that I want to make sure that you guys have set up correctly is that this medium, or you may have a presentation, wow, my computer doesn't show any, but it should be medium. Oh man, let me see if I can bypass this. We should change it to low. And the question is why it's causing such an error. So I recommend changing it either from medium to low or draft. Low should be okay. The more precise it is, the more the render will take up to render. Will take up time to render. So keep that in mind. You don't want to do that at your first run, just to see if you like the colors or the material. The render is especially good when you actually have lights and everything else is specified. That way you can tell how it looks like in a nice, precise rendered view. Alright, so basically that is what you need to have preset. You also need to save location for your renders. If you're using a computer that does not allow you to save onto the C drive or any drive that's being defaulted to, you have to change it to a directory where you don't have to worry about that. So
when you at the very end where the floppy is, the little dots, you put save to where you save it?
Yeah, save it to the location will be by hitting those dots. You'll specify the location and the size. You can do, of course, monochrome, which is black and white, grayscale, colors, million colors. You can do 24 bits as long as you feel like your computer can handle it. And that's where it's going to save the files, and they're set at default at BMP, which Paint can open up, so don't have to worry about that. Alright, so that's that. This another quick information. This is the progress line, so when you are running a render, usually you can do it in the background. This will show you the process of how much it's already completed and how much needs to be done just yet. It doesn't specify how much time though, and when I'm running render, I'm pretty much leaving the computer alone because any work during that time may crash it. So I don't recommend doing that. Alright, so basically you have your shapes. If not, please do so. Place your shapes, go into material browsers. So under render, we're in material browsers. And of course we're in 3D modeling and we are in realistic view. A toolbar like so should show up on your right side, or it may show up somewhere else, or it may show up in full size like this. That would be great, but this is what you need to open up. You can move it into a specified location, or you can double click and release it from the sides. Basically the top portion specifies what materials are currently being used. You probably won't see this material library, so you're probably somewhere in here. You got something like this, and the way to get material to use is you go under this house, you go into Autodesk Library, and you will see there's a folder called Autodesk Library where you can select a specified material type. So you got from ceramics, concrete, default, and all these lovely different parts. So feel free to play around with these, decide what material you like. There are a lot of different material, so you have plenty to choose from. So basically, once you have that, what you can do is select it. If you want a closer up view of the actual material, and these icons are kind of small, there's a few different options. What you can do is actually go into the edit mode. So when you select that right side, there's an edit or a pencil. It gives you a properties menu where it shows you the actual material, and you can change that into different shapes for a benefit of better visual view of it. The only problem with this is every time you do that, it adds on to your material being used. So you're gonna have to purge this later on, and I'll show you guys how to do that. Let's say I pick something more interesting, like glass. So give me a preview window of a sphere. I can change that in case I want to use a cylinder. Gives me a better view. I can do that. Gives me the specifications on it, the color, RGB. If there's an image related to it, image fade, glossiness. And you can read more about these things in the book. I'm not going to give you definitions on those just yet. Reflection, especially for glass, this is a reflective glass, so there's a direction and some other information. Transparency, of course, it's glass, so it's 50% transparent, and there's no additional information added. The other ones are not being used, so you don't have to worry about those, but you can add those in yourself. You can edit this material. So that's one benefit about doing renderings. You can edit material. We'll get into that a little bit more, but let's go back to our basics. So I have a material I do like, this blue glass. All I need to do is I just drag it onto the solid part, and in realistic, you actually see the blue come out. Now you can do that for all different materials and all different parts. The also benefit is you can also, by holding control, you can do a single surface. So instead of doing the whole entire object, you can do a surface by holding control and dragging down the material onto that surface. But then again, if you drag it on the part again, it will replace it. So keep that in mind. If you're going to do one surface, you make sure you do all the other surfaces are done the same exact way. So I have one material that's placed on the entire object, and then I decide to make the top surface a lighter color material. I hold control, drag it, and it creates that lovely material. So feel free to play.
Hold on the control key when you're just trying to do a surface?
Yes. So you hold down control key when you're dragging and placing the material on a surface only. Alright, so if you're happy and you decide you played around with a lot of different materials, and then you decided that looking at your list of materials that you used on this project, you didn't really use all of them. There's extra ones that weren't used, and they're just filling this area up. That's only going to make the file bigger. So to clear these up, there's a few different ways. One way is just clicking on them and clicking delete. That will delete the material. You can right click delete, or you can right click and purge all unused. So purging all of them will remove any unused material. So the rest are the materials I'm using that are currently on this drawing. Now that's great, especially if you have a big project where they use a dozen or more materials, and you just want to clear up the ones that you don't use so that you know which ones are being used. Also, when you're selecting and using the same material for a few different spots, what you get to consider is, once you do it once, let me get a good color here, and drag it onto the material, you notice that it comes up and your material used. From here, you can also drag it and place it on your next part. So pretty simple, pretty easy. The next thing is, let's say you have parts in your drawing that represent a specified material. So I have this design here. Not even sure what this is, but each one of these parts is a different layer, which I need to add layers now. And we can add a material to a specified layer. So I'll add that in and I'll show that how you do that. I have these layers set up with all the different materials. Not set up just yet, which I have to add. But I can change the layers of the parts. So let's say this is going to be wood. This is going to be other. And this is going to be steel. Now to match the material or attach the material to a specified layer, what I don't go for the icon, I go directly into typing in material, attach. So I type that in, and now you can see the materials that are currently being used, the layers that I have already established. So all I need to do is select one and select the other side so they can intertwine. So that was actually wrong because magenta is not the steel. Steel would be, actually I don't have a steel, but I can use glass. So glass, this is wood, this is other. I don't have steel right now, so I'd have to add that in. Not sure if it's going to let me do it now. Since I'm open in this area, I can't do that, but I can add a steel now. Steel or metal. Metal. And there we go. So now each layer has a material, and you can see that changed to the material. So this got changed, this got changed, and this got changed. It's based on layers. So if I work in those layers, anything I create will be that color. So if I do steel, it's that aluminum and metal aluminum. So that's how you attach it to layers, and that's great, especially if you're doing a huge project where it's just everything's based on a layer. You don't want to select each part and drag a material onto it. All you want to do is change all the materials, like all these pipes are going to be on the same layer, and you want the same material. Done. Very easy and simple. If you're looking for the icon on attaching the material to the layer, it's under your Render tab, Materials, and there's Attach by Layer. If your computer is slow at this, there's another thing that you can edit under Render. There is Render Quality. You can reduce that, and you can also reduce the specified image size. So once we do actually click on Render, all these should be low, and then we start building up the more comfortable you are with the actual material you placed on the job. Next quick thing, material textures on and off. You can turn those on. You can turn them off so you can see there's very or little no texture. There's a materials half and half, so it kind of gives you, and then there's the full out. So if you're not seeing the textures that you're looking for, like for brick, keep that active. Again, that's another thing that will make your computer work slower, so keep that in mind. Next thing would be under that, there is the material mapping. So material mapping is quite interesting. I don't know if you guys want to play around with it, but what it does is you select an object, and you, based on the material mapping, it gives you these triangles where you can adjust the mapping. So if these are bricks, as you can see, if I'm going, I don't know if you guys can see it now, very lightly. If I drag it from here, the bricks get wider. See these lines, and so forth. So that's how you map out a textured material like brick, or like any image.
Adjusting the material
Yeah.
inside the object you have.
Yeah, it's just adjusting the material. It does not adjust the actual solid object. So if you want smaller bricks, you reduce this to be smaller. And you can also adjust it based on different other shapes. So let's say you have a cylinder, or actually a sphere. We can add a material to that, a brick, and you can adjust that one. When you go under a material mapping, you go spherical, and that adjusts it completely differently. Oh, actually, that's probably not what we want to use for that. Let's see, box would work better. There are times that the other one mappings are way better than using just a regular box, but most of the time you'll be using the box. So keep that in mind. I mean, if you do want to use cylinder, that's also a second one that I use somewhat. So see, adjusted the actual image. These threads across get reduced or increased as I drag this out. And I can also move it. So the top moves, the sides don't move, and so forth. That's how you play around with the textured material and the mapping. And then if you want to remove material, you go into remove materials, you select the object, and it just removes it. Now based on the let's go back to render. So that's just removing.
Where was the removing?
It's under material browser. You go down there, it's remove materials. It's under that arrow because most of the time you won't be removing material. Instead, you'll be just replacing it with a different material. That's why it's not so easy to find. We went through attach by layer.
Can't you just just grab pull it out of the material?
Now let's go back to material editing. So selecting a material that you semi like, or you can start with the default. You can select like fabric, hit the pen, which is edit materials, and you get this new box. Gives you an example preview window, which you can change to any shape, size, wherever you like. There's even a pool, but that kind of doesn't look right on this material. It's the fabric, so they usually show it as a draped fabric. You can change the name. So Scottish fabric. You can change the colors, you can change the image. As you can see, the image here is like the fabric, and that's the underlayment color. Image fade, it's not, it's 100%. All these additional information can be edited. I'm not to, I don't get to play with these because I am not one of those designers. There's reflections, but there's, of course, all these materials do not change because this material is a fabric. But if you do want to change something and make it transparent, or even you want it to glow, you can specify that. So if you hit the check mark, this is where you start changing it, changing the strengths of the lights, and so forth. You can see it's already giving you a preview of how lit up it is. Hey, who knows, maybe you have an actual light inside and you want it to glow. That might be a reason.
When you do the change.
And these options are actually different from each material you go to. So let's say if we went into, I think I have some wood here, roofing. There it gives you additional, there is no transparency, but there's additional image fades, and so forth. Now if we go into, let's say, a glass, it also shows you different options. Same with metal and so forth. So you can play around with these. I don't, but you can make it more transparent or less transparent. It all depends. But there's one thing I do want you guys to do, which is pretty simple. So we will all drag a simple material, probably a plastic, doesn't matter what color, start with white. Okay, so we're going to have a white plastic, and we want to change this to a John Deere green. Now, probably asking, like, how are you going to do that? How do you know the exact RGB? It's pretty simple. thanks to the internet, all you have to do is go to Google or whatever you prefer, and you type in John Deere RGB. So there's a trademark. They own that color pretty much. Now if I can find it. There you go. So the convert color for John Deere, it gives you all different specifications. We use the RGB, which is 54 to 124 and 4. If you feel like writing that or researching it on your own, feel free. Of course, you can use other colors like BMW's blue, or every other company. Harley's orange. Every company owns their own color almost scheme. And then we go back to our drawing. We have that fine textured white. It's a plastic. And this is where we added it. I'm going to call it the John D color. And here in the RGB, as you can see, you click on it, you can either select it and hope you hit the exact number, or you place that number in. And you get exactly the color that John Deere uses for its product. So if you're doing a design for John Deere, you might as well use the exact same color they use on all their products. Makes you stand out. And all you have to do is exit out. Your part has that material. It's great. Now when you have all these materials complete and set up and it looks nice, what we do next is move into our next major step. I'm going to delete some of these because that's just going to oversize my drawing. I zoom in so I can fit the entire object or objects. Now remember, I have these templates and these lower bottom that's covering the actual view, but when I do the render, it selects everything. Now to do the render, we have it set at low. Again, make sure it's either draft or low, and right next to it is the render. There's two options. You can render a region, or you render the entire screenshot. Our region's pretty simple. You select that. We work without using the medium image library. I mean, you might be able to have that at home, but here we don't. And you can select a region or a rectangle, any shape that would render right there in your view. The only thing about this, it's not saved. It just creates a region for your own preference to view and see if you like it. Kind of lame. I should have put a little bit better colors. And this is white because it's glowing so hard. You know, I put the self-illumination at 100, so it's pretty much light bulb. Even though it kind of gives you a preview that it's material-wise. You can always go back to the material and edit it as well. So if I don't like transparent, oh, that's not the one. This the one? Reduce the amount. Yeah, should be okay. Or I'm going to just turn it off completely. Oh, that's not transparency, it's self-illumination. I'm going to change it to 50. Maybe 100. Kind of looks 150. Alright, I'm going to exit out. Now I'm happy with it. So I can do the preview region once more. Just going to do this area. Now I can kind of see the texture. Looks great. I like it. And to actually do final renderings, you want to go back into your regular rendering. So under the arrow, you go your first render, you select it, work without using medium. Yeah, I'm going to override, because I did it once before, it's going to override that file on my desktop, because that's where I saved it. You guys may have it in different places. So every time you do it, it overrides it, unless you change the name. This is the preview window. You can zoom in. It gives you the information about the actual file, the size, the view is current, rendering type, and render present, low. So it's low rendering. It doesn't look that great. You can move to the next step, which is medium. Just going to override it, and it's a little bit more rendered. Oh, actually, it didn't go through.
Do you, like, for a project like that, do you suggest that you do it step by step?
Depending on your computer, I would recommend doing step by step. If you have a very well maintained computer that can handle this kind of things, then you can probably just go directly to presentation. Also, you can use presentation not only then, but when you have a simple part and it's one material, it's usually not a big deal. But when you have a lot more material, keep in mind that placing presentation will take quite a longer time. And also, you can also change the size of your rendering. That helps, especially when you want to show your client and he wants to view it. In addition to these changes, you can also go into the properties, advanced rendering settings, where you set up the current setup. Now, mine was presentation here, but it's in my advanced settings, it's set at low. That's why I had such a weird situation in mind. Normally you would follow both of these. And it also comes with the size. You can change the exposure, you can the output location. So everything you see here pretty much can be is in the same location as here. Also, if you don't want to, let's see if I can change this. No, we're not going to play with this out just yet. Let's see if I can get it nicer. Might not even look better than, no, this is as good as it's going to get for this. These materials are not the best choice. But we'll show you next how to do a rendering of a room and something more interesting than these boring squares and rectangles and anything.